Beneath a broken light, a freezing little girl whispered she'd starve if no one bought her toy. A billionaire almost walked away until he saw the truth hidden inside. That single moment would drag him into a fight he never expected and change both their lives forever. The wind came first, sharp, thin, merciless. It sliced through the abandoned pier like something alive, rattling the rusted rides and whispering through broken ticket booths. The old carousel stood frozen in place, its painted horses chipped and hollow-eyed, as if they had been waiting too long for laughter that would never return. Callum Vale walked through it all without slowing. Long charcoal coat, leather gloves, polished boots crushing frost into glitter beneath each step. A man built from control, precision, and silence. The city trusted him to reshape skylines. Investors trusted him to multiply millions. But inside there was nothing. Not warmth, not pride, not even regret. Just quiet. Then a voice broke it. Small, fragile, almost lost to the wind. Please, buy one, or I won't eat tonight. Callum stopped. Not gradually, not thoughtfully, instantly. The words hit him like something physical. He turned. Beneath a flickering street lamp sat a little girl on a splintered wooden bench. 7, maybe. Too thin. Too still. A faded red dress hung off her shoulders like it belonged to someone else. Her knees were bruised blue with cold. One shoe pink, one brown, both broken. In front of her a cardboard box. Inside it, tiny mismatched toys lined up with impossible care. A headless soldier, a torn bear, a cracked snow globe. She looked up at him, and that was the worst part. Not fear, not desperation. Acceptance. The kind adults wear after losing everything. My name is Lila, she said softly, as if repeating something she had practiced. You can pick anyone. From somewhere in the shadows, a man's voice slurred through the air. Don't you give anything away, girl. Lila didn't flinch, didn't move, didn't even look back. Callum felt something shift. Small, but deep. Like ice cracking for the first time in years, Callum didn't move right away. He just stood there, the cold pressing in the wind, tugging at his coat. The girl's eyes holding him in place like something heavier than gravity. A deal. That's all this was supposed to be. A transaction. Simple, clean, safe. He reached into his coat and pulled out his wallet, the leather, smooth, expensive, familiar. He didn't check the amount, just took out a bill and held it toward her. $20. Too much for anything in that box. Too much for something so broken. Lila stared at it, not with excitement, not even relief. Confusion flickered across her face, quick and quiet. Then she carefully reached into the box and picked up the cracked snow globe. You have to take one, she said, voice trembling just slightly now. Or he'll know. Callum's hand paused midair. He followed her gaze just for a second toward the darkness behind the broken rides. Something moved there. Or maybe it didn't. It didn't matter. He understood enough. He took the snow globe. Plastic. Cheap. Cold. Inside, a crooked little Christmas tree leaned under faded artificial snow. The globe was cracked along one side, a thin, jagged line like something had tried to break it and failed. Like her. Callum turned it slightly in his hand, and that's when he saw it. Something tucked beneath the base. Small, hidden, a folded piece of paper. His eyes flicked back to Lila. She was watching him now. Not hopeful, not afraid. Just waiting. Before he could speak, a shadow stretched across the ground. Heavy footsteps. The smell of alcohol hit before the voice did. I said, "Don't give nothing away." The man stepped into the light, and suddenly, this wasn't a transaction anymore. The elevator doors slid open without a sound. Glass, steel, silence. Callum stepped back into his world as if nothing had happened. but something had. He placed the snow globe at the center of his desk. It didn't belong there. Not among contracts worth millions. Not beside architectural plans that would reshape entire blocks of the city. It looked cheap, out of place, almost embarrassing. And yet he couldn't look away. The crack caught the light first. A thin, jagged line across the plastic dome distorting the tiny tree inside. When he turned it slightly, the artificial snow shifted in slow, reluctant flakes. Then the memory came. Uninvited, unforgiving. A hospital room. Too white, too quiet. His little sister, Noelle. 8 years old, pale beneath fluorescent lights, smiling anyway as she shook a snow globe just like this one. "Don't blink," she had whispered. "Or the wish won't work," he had laughed. Back then he still believed in things. Back then he still believed he could keep her. Callum's jaw tightened. The memory slipped away, leaving behind something heavier than before. His phone buzzed. Meetings, contracts, numbers. He ignored all of it. Instead, his eyes drifted back to the base of the globe. That tiny fold of paper. Still hidden. Still waiting. He reached for it. Stopped. Not yet. A sharp voice cut through the stillness. "Mr. Vale, there's a little girl downstairs." His assistant hesitated. "She says, you forgot your change." Everything inside him stilled. For a second, the entire city outside his windows felt unreal. Then he grabbed the snow globe and turned toward the elevator. Fast. Too fast for a man who never rushed. Because somehow he already knew. This wasn't over. The lobby felt colder than it should have. Not from the weather. From the way people looked. Curious. Confused. Quietly judging. Callum stepped out of the private elevator, the snow globe still in his hand, his pulse louder than the marble silence around him. And then he saw her. Lila stood near the glass doors, small against the towering windows, her breath fogging the cold surface in soft, uneven clouds. Her fingers were curled tightly around a crumpled $5 bill, both hands holding it like it might disappear if she loosened her grip. She turned when she heard him. Relief flickered across her face. "I ran," she said quickly, her voice slightly out of breath. You forgot your change." Callum stopped a few steps away. For a moment he couldn't speak. She had run through the cold, through the wind, through whatever waited for her back there, just to return $5. "I didn't want you to get in trouble," she added softly. Something in his chest tightened. Not sharp. Not sudden, just deep. He crouched down to her level. Up close it was worse, the faint bruise around her wrist, the dryness of her lips, the way her shoulders trembled even though she was trying to stay still. He didn't take the money. Instead, he gently closed her fingers back over it. "You kept it safe," he said quietly. Her eyes searched his face. Careful. Measuring, waiting for the part where kindness turns into something else. It didn't. Callum stood and held out his hand. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you warm." Lila hesitated. Just a second. Then slowly she placed her small freezing hand in his. And the entire lobby fell silent as they walked away together. The sky had already started to dim when Callum turned the car back toward the pier. He hadn't planned to return. But plans meant nothing now. The image wouldn't leave him, small hands shaking, a voice too calm for a child. So he came back. The wind had grown harsher, sharper. It scraped across the empty amusement grounds, rattling metal and echoing through the hollow rides like something broken trying to speak. And then he saw her. Lila stood near the back alley beside a rusted dumpster, carefully stacking the same broken toys back into her box. Her movements were slow, mechanical, like she was running on something that had almost run out. Relief flickered in him until it shattered. A man staggered into view, heavy steps, unsteady, angry. Trent. Even from a distance, Callum could feel it, the kind of presence that didn't need to shout to be dangerous. Then Trent grabbed her. Hard. Lila gasped, her small body yanked forward as the box tipped, toys scattering across the frozen ground. "I told you no freebies," he barked, his voice thick with alcohol. "You think food just shows up?" She didn't fight, didn't scream, just lowered her eyes. And that was what broke something inside Callum. He moved before thinking. Fast, direct. He stepped between them, his voice low, controlled, but carrying something colder than the wind. "Let her go." Trent blinked, thrown off balance. "Who the hell touch her again?" Callum said, steady, unshaking, "and you won't like what happens next." For a moment, everything stopped. The wind, the noise, even Lila's breathing. Because for the first time, someone had stepped in and didn't walk away. The police lights came and went, red, blue, empty, just like that. Statements taken, voices lowered, shoulders shrugged, no visible injury, no immediate proof. Trent cleaned himself up fast enough to sound almost reasonable, and the system moved on. Callum stood there long after the patrol car disappeared, hands still clenched, jaw locked, watching as Trent dragged Lila away like nothing had happened, like she was nothing. The cold settled deeper after that, not on his skin, inside him. He should have left. Anyone else would have. But he didn't. He parked near the collapsed funhouse engine, off lights, dark. The pier fell silent again, swallowed by wind and distance. Minutes passed, then an hour, then another. He didn't move, didn't check his phone, didn't think about meetings or contracts or anything that used to matter. Only her. Finally, he pulled up the old security feed, a favor he wasn't proud of. Grainy footage flickered to life. And there she was, Lila, curled outside a dented trailer, alone, her cardboard box pressed against her chest like armor, knees pulled in, shoulders shaking in tiny, uncontrollable movements. No coat, no light. No one opening the door for her. She didn't knock, didn't cry, didn't beg. She just stayed, endured. Callum exhaled slowly, his breath fogging the inside of the windshield. "I built everything," he muttered under his breath. "And I can't stop this." The words tasted like failure, like truth. The Ferris wheel loomed behind her, dead and towering, its broken lights flickering faintly, like stars that had given up. Callum closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Decision. Clear. Heavy. Final. "I'm going back," he whispered. "Not tomorrow. Not later. Tonight. Because some things you don't wait to fix." Dawn hadn't fully arrived yet. The sky was that cold, colorless gray, the kind that makes everything feel unfinished. Callum moved fast across the pier, breath sharp in his chest, boots cutting through thin ice. He found her exactly where he feared. Lila was already awake, already working, kneeling on frozen ground, carefully lining up the same broken toys, like nothing had happened. Like the night hadn't existed. Like the cold hadn't tried to take something from her. She looked up when she saw him. Not surprised. Just quiet. "You don't have to do this today," Callum said, lowering his voice like he might scare the moment away. She hesitated, then hugged her arms tighter around herself. "If I don't," she said softly, "he'll be mad." The words landed like something permanent. Callum crouched in front of her. "He's not here right now," he said gently. "Come with me, just for a little while." The wind answered before she did. It cut through her thin dress, making her shiver harder this time. That decided it. Slowly, carefully. She nodded. The car heater blasted warm air, but her body kept shaking anyway, like it didn't trust the warmth yet. She sat small in the passenger seat, hands tucked under her legs, eyes fixed forward. Silent. Callum didn't push. He just drove. The clinic lights were too bright, too clean. Dr. Evelyn Shaw worked quietly, professionally, but her eyes told the truth before her words did. Early frostbite, she said under her breath. Malnutrition, dehydration, and older injuries. She looked at Callum. Serious now. She doesn't get another night like that. No hesitation, no second thought. Callum signed the papers. Every line, every risk, every responsibility. Lila sat wrapped in a blanket holding a cup of hot cocoa with both hands staring into it like it was something she didn't quite believe was hers. Callum looked at her and understood. This wasn't temporary anymore. The penthouse doors opened with a soft, seamless click. Warmth spilled out. Quiet, clean, untouched. Lila stopped at the threshold, didn't step in. Her eyes moved slowly, glass walls, soft lights, polished floors, everything too perfect, too still. A place like this didn't belong to someone like her. You could see the thought forming even if she didn't say it. Callum noticed. He didn't rush her, just knelt beside her. "It's okay," he said quietly. Not a command, an invitation. After a moment, she stepped inside. Small, careful, like she was afraid the floor might reject her. Callum crouched again, gently pulling off her shoes. The fabric was damp. Cold seeped into his fingers. Her socks clung to her skin, thin and worn. He didn't react, didn't comment. Just wrapped her in a soft robe that swallowed her whole. She looked smaller somehow, but safer. Then he went to the kitchen and failed. The first sandwich burned. The second one nearly slipped out of the pan. A knife clattered too loud. He muttered a quiet curse, then instantly glanced back at her. Sorry. She didn't answer. Just watched. Finally, he got it right. Crooked, uneven, but hot. He placed it in front of her. Lila picked it up with both hands, paused, closed her eyes and took a bite. Slow, careful, like each second mattered. She didn't rush, didn't tear through it. Just ate. And Callum stood there watching something he couldn't explain. Because for the first time in years, that room didn't feel empty. It felt full. The apartment quieted as night settled over the city. Chicago glowed outside, cold lights, distant traffic. The river cutting through it all like a vein of silver. Inside, everything felt softer, slower, like the world had finally lowered its voice. Callum stood at the doorway of the guest room. Lila hovered just inside. She didn't move toward the bed right away, didn't touch anything. Her eyes traced the edges of the room like she was memorizing it, or preparing to lose it. "You can sleep here," Callum said gently. "No pressure, no expectations. Just space." She nodded, slow, then walked to the bedside table and placed the snow globe down with both hands, careful, almost ceremonial, like she was claiming the room in the only way she knew how. Callum found an old book, dusty, forgotten, and sat on the edge of the bed. "Want me to read?" he asked. She hesitated, then climbed under the covers. He started. The words came out rough at first, unfamiliar in his mouth. He stumbled once, paused, tried again. But she didn't correct him, didn't laugh. She just listened, curled up, still holding the edge of the blanket like it might disappear. Her breathing slowed, eyes growing heavy. Then, softly, "Do you think—" He stopped reading, looked at her. "Do you think my mom would have liked you?" The question hung there, fragile, dangerous. Callum felt something tighten in his chest. No rehearsed answer, no safe response, just truth. "I hope so," he said quietly. "I really hope so." Lila studied his face for a moment longer, then nodded, satisfied. She pulled the blanket closer, reached for the snow globe, and drifted off. Finally, at peace. Callum didn't move. He stayed in the doorway long after, watching. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of the silence. He was afraid of losing what had just filled it. Morning didn't arrive the way it used to. Not cold, not empty. Not quiet in that hollow, echoing way Callum had grown used to. It arrived, alive. Sunlight spilled through the glass walls in soft gold, catching dust in the air, warming the edges of the room. The city beyond still looked distant, still indifferent, but inside something had changed. Callum stood in the kitchen, barefoot, half awake, holding a spatula like it was a foreign object. Eggs, toast, orange slices, simple things. He focused harder on this than he had on any deal in years. The eggs were uneven, the toast slightly too dark. One orange slice rolled off the counter and hit the floor. He didn't care. Because behind him, there was a small pair of footsteps. Slow, careful. Lila appeared at the edge of the kitchen, still wrapped in the oversized shirt he'd given her. Her hair was a soft mess, eyes heavy with sleep snow globe clutched in one hand, like it belonged to her more than anything else in the world. She stopped, watched him, like she wasn't sure this version of him would still be there in daylight. Callum turned, gave a small, uncertain smile. Morning. She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, morning. It was softer than anything he'd heard from her, but it was there. He set a cup of hot cocoa in front of her, marshmallows melting into the surface. She wrapped both hands around it, instantly pulling it close, breathing in the warmth before even taking a sip. That small gesture, it stayed with him. The way she treated warmth like something fragile, like it could vanish if she moved too fast. They ate in silence at first. Not uncomfortable, just new. Then something shifted. She tapped her foot lightly under the counter. A rhythm. Faint. Almost accidental. Callum turned on a low jazz record. Soft music filled the room, and for the first time Lila smiled. Small, but real. Later she sat at the table drawing, crayons pressed hard against paper. When she finished, she walked over and handed it to him. 3 stick figures. A tall man, a little girl, and a woman with bright hair. Above them, written in uneven letters, "People who stay." Callum stared at it, longer than he meant to, then walked to the fridge and pinned it up, right in the center, where it belonged. Because somehow this house wasn't empty anymore. It was learning how to breathe. Winter settled deeper over Chicago, colder, quieter, heavier, and with it reality arrived. Paperwork, calls, questions, the kind of things that didn't care about good intentions. Callum stood by the window phone, pressed to his ear, voice low-controlled, but inside everything felt fragile. This wasn't a deal he could negotiate. There were no shortcuts, no leverage strong enough to guarantee an outcome. Only proof, only truth, only time. The knock at the door came right on schedule, sharp, professional. Callum opened it. Maris Dugan stepped inside, mid-40s, sharp eyes, no wasted movement, the kind of presence that had seen too much to be impressed by wealth or softened by charm. She didn't smile, didn't comment on the penthouse. She just observed everything. The clean floors, the stocked kitchen, the child-sized slippers near the couch, the drawing on the fridge. She stopped there. Did she make that? She asked. Callum nodded. Maris studied the words. People who stay. Something shifted in her expression just slightly. Then she turned back. Let's be clear, she said, voice calm but firm. This isn't about what you can provide. It's about whether you'll still be here when it gets difficult. Callum didn't flinch. I will be. She held his gaze, long enough to test it. Then a small nod. Behind them, soft footsteps. Lila appeared in the hallway, paused, her eyes locked onto Maris instantly. Alert, guarded. Children like her learned quickly new adults meant new risks. Maris lowered herself slowly to Lila's level. Not too close. Not too soft. "Hi, Lila," she said. "My name's Maris." Lila didn't respond, just held the snow globe tighter, watching, waiting, measuring. Maris didn't push, didn't ask questions she wasn't ready to answer. She just stayed there, steady, patient, and that mattered, because trust didn't come from words. It came from not leaving. Later, as Maris stood to go, she paused at the door. "The hearing's coming fast," she said to Callum, "and it won't be easy." He nodded. "I know." She studied him one last time, then said quietly, "Good, because she deserves someone who does." The door closed. Silence returned. But it felt different now. Heavier. Real. Because for the first time, Callum understood this wasn't rescue anymore. This was a fight. It happened quietly. No music. No build-up. No warning. Just a moment that refused to stay hidden any longer. Lila was sitting on the floor near the couch, the snow globe resting in her lap, turning it slowly between her fingers, like she had done 100 times before. The crack caught the light, splitting the tiny world inside into something broken, and something still standing. Callum watched from across the room. "Then can you open it?" Her voice was soft, but certain. He froze. "You want me to?" She nodded, didn't look at him, just stared at the globe, like she already knew something was inside, but didn't want to be the one to find it. Callum moved slowly, carefully. He sat down beside her, the weight of the small object suddenly heavier than anything he'd held in years. His fingers traced the cracked edge, then moved to the base. Twisted. Stopped. For a second he hesitated, then opened it. The bottom loosened with a soft click, and there it was. The folded piece of paper. Small, worn, hidden long enough to almost disappear. Lila's breath caught. Callum unfolded it gently. The room went still. The world narrowed. And then he read it, silently at first, then again, slower, like the words were carving themselves into him. He didn't want to speak them out loud, but Lila was watching him now, waiting, so he did. "To whoever finds this." His voice almost failed. "Please, love my girl." Lila didn't move, didn't blink. "Don't let her stay cold. She deserves more than I could give." The words settled into the room like something final, something that had been waiting to be heard. Lila lowered her head. One tear fell, quiet, unstoppable. She knew. She whispered. Callum swallowed hard, looked at the paper again, at the desperation between the lines, at the love that had been forced to hide. This wasn't just a note. It was a warning, a goodbye, a promise that someone somewhere had tried. He folded it back slowly, carefully, like it might break if he didn't. Then looked at Lila, and something inside him locked into place. No hesitation, no doubt, no turning back. Because now this wasn't just about saving her. It was about finishing what her mother started. The courthouse rose out of the morning like something carved from winter itself. Cold stone, tall columns, echoes that swallowed voices whole. Lila's hand tightened in Callum's as they stepped inside. She didn't look up, didn't look around, just stayed close. Like if she let go, something would take her back. Callum felt it in her grip. Fear, not loud, not panicked, the quiet kind, the kind that had learned to survive by staying still. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling slightly beside her. "I'm right here." She nodded, but didn't loosen her hold. The courtroom doors opened, and everything felt bigger. The ceilings too high, the benches too far apart, the air too heavy. Trent was already there. Clean shirt, washed face, playing the part. But his eyes still wrong. They found Lila immediately. She flinched. Just enough. Callum stepped closer, blocking the line. No words, just presence. The judge entered. Silence followed. Proceedings began. Voices moved around the room, lawyers, officials, statements layered over each other like something distant. Callum heard it all, but none of it mattered the way Lila's hand in his did. Maris spoke. Clear. Direct. Unshaken. Medical reports, frostbite risk, malnutrition, previous incidents, each word landed, each detail carved deeper. Trent's lawyer stood, smooth, confident. He turned the focus. Your Honor, Mr. Vale is a wealthy man with no prior experience raising a child. This appears to be impulsive. A pause, then a savior complex. The words hung, sharp, ugly, real enough to sting. Callum didn't react, didn't defend himself, because this wasn't about him. When it was his turn, he stood. No notes, no script, just truth. She returned money I didn't even ask for, he said quietly. She thanks people before she eats. She waits to see if it's safe. Before she breathes, the room stilled. Callum looked at the judge, then at Lila. I don't know everything, he continued, but I know this: she shouldn't have had to survive that. His voice dropped. Steady, certain, and I won't let her go back to it. Silence followed. Not empty, heavy. Because for the first time, this wasn't just a case. It was a line, and everyone in the room knew it was about to be crossed. The courtroom held its breath, not dramatically, not loudly, but in that quiet, invisible way when something is about to matter. Maris stepped forward. In her hands, the snow globe, cracked, worn, ordinary to anyone who didn't know better. She placed it carefully on the evidence table. This was found in the child's possession, she said, voice steady. It contains material relevant to the case. A few glances shifted, mild curiosity, nothing more, until she opened it. The room leaned in without meaning to. Callum felt it too. That same weight from the night before. The same quiet gravity. Maris unfolded the paper, smoothed it out, and then she read. To whoever finds this. Her voice carried. Clear, unshaken. Please love my girl. Lila's fingers tightened around Callum's hand. He felt it immediately, the tremor, the memory rising. Don't let her stay cold. A pause. Even Maris had to steady her breath. She deserves more than I could give. Silence. Not courtroom silence, not formal. Something deeper, something human. The judge leaned back slightly, eyes focused. Not on the paper, on Lila. Lila didn't look up. Her head lowered, shoulders still, like if she didn't move, she wouldn't break. Callum felt something twist hard inside his chest. Because this wasn't evidence. This was a mother's last act, hidden inside plastic, buried under silence, waiting for someone to listen. Trent shifted suddenly, loud, uncomfortable. That doesn't prove anything, he snapped, voice rising. Anyone could have written that, but it didn't land. Not anymore, not after that. Callum's lawyer stood, calm, prepared. And yet he said, placing a file on the table, Mr. Monroe's background suggests otherwise. He opened it. Pages turned. Names, records, truth. Trent Monroe. He continued, also known as Trenton Miles Monroe. Prior arrests in 2 states. Child endangerment reports. Custody violations. The words stacked, one after another, until the air shifted, until the illusion broke. Trent's confidence cracked. Fast. No, those aren't. The courtroom doors opened. 2 officers stepped inside. Firm, direct, Trenton Miles Monroe. One of them said, we have a warrant for your arrest. Everything stopped, for real this time. No arguments, no deflection, just the sound of metal. Handcuffs closing. Lila flinched. Small, sharp. Callum's arm moved instantly, pulling her closer, shielding her from the moment, from the sound, from everything she shouldn't have had to see. Trent struggled, swore, but it didn't matter anymore. Because for the first time, the truth wasn't hidden. It wasn't ignored. It wasn't dismissed. It stood, clear, unavoidable. The judge looked down at the bench, then at Lila, and finally at Callum. And in that moment, the entire room knew. This wasn't just a story about what happened. It was about what happens next. The courtroom didn't return to normal. It couldn't. Not after that. The air still held the echo of metal, the weight of the note, the quiet, undeniable truth that had finally been spoken out loud. The judge adjusted the papers in front of her, measured, composed. But even she took a moment before speaking. When she did, her voice was steady, firm, but not unkind. In light of the evidence presented, every word mattered now, including documented medical concerns, witness testimony, and the material recovered. A pause, long enough for hearts to beat louder. This court finds that the current guardian, Mr. Trenton Monroe, is unfit to provide a safe environment for the child. Lila's fingers tightened again. Callum didn't move, didn't speak, just stayed. With immediate effect, the judge continued. Temporary emergency custody is granted to Mr. Callum Vale. Silence. Then a breath, barely there, from Lila. She looked up slowly, eyes wide, uncertain, like she hadn't heard it right. "So," she whispered, voice fragile, almost afraid to exist. "I don't have to go back." Callum felt something break open inside him. Not painful, not sharp, something deeper. He dropped to one knee beside her, right there in the courtroom. Didn't care who was watching. Didn't care what it looked like. "You don't," he said softly, simple, certain. "You can stay." Her face didn't change at first, like the words needed time to reach her, to sink in, to become real. Then her lips trembled, just slightly, and she leaned forward, wrapped her arms around him, tight, not polite, not careful, real. Callum held her just as tightly, one hand at the back of her head, steady grounding. Because she wasn't just holding on to him, she was holding on to something she'd never been allowed to believe in. Safety. The judge allowed the moment, didn't interrupt, didn't rush it, because even in a room built for rules, some moments deserved space. Outside, snow had started to fall, soft, slow, quiet against the courthouse windows. When they stepped out later, the city looked different. Not warmer, not kinder, but possible. Lila walked beside him, her hand still wrapped around his sleeve like she didn't trust distance yet. Callum glanced down at her. She looked smaller out here, but lighter, as if something invisible had finally been lifted. "I don't feel cold," she said suddenly. He stopped, looked at her. "You don't," she shook her head, and for the first time she smiled without hesitation. Callum placed a hand gently on her shoulder and realized this wasn't the end, not even close. But it was something else, something bigger, a beginning. One that had been waiting since the moment a little girl sat under a broken light, and someone finally chose not to walk away. The pier looked different in daylight. Not better. Not yet. But different. Callum stood at the edge of it, hands in his coat pockets, watching the wind move through what used to be laughter. Rusted rails, peeling paint. The skeleton of a carousel that hadn't turned in years. Once he had seen this place as opportunity. A redevelopment file, a number, a decision waiting to be signed. Now he saw it the way Lila must have seen it. Cold, forgotten, a place where no one stayed long enough to notice who was left behind. Behind him, small footsteps crunched softly over frost. Lila, wrapped in a coat that finally fit her. Red, warm, real. She walked up beside him holding a paper cup of cocoa with both hands, steam rising in soft curls around her face. "It's still sad," she said quietly. Callum glanced down at her. "Yeah," he answered. It is. She looked out at the empty rides again. Then, are we going to fix it? Not hopeful, not demanding, just asking. Callum exhaled slowly, then nodded. Yeah, he said. We are. And just like that, the plan changed. Not on paper, in purpose. The work started fast, faster than any project he'd ever approved. But this time it wasn't about deadlines. It was about people. Electricians rewired dead strings of lights. Painters covered years of neglect in bright, stubborn color. Woodworkers replaced broken benches, sanded them smooth, made them safe again. And every morning, Lila came with him. Same seat in the car. Same quiet ride. Same thermos of cocoa between them. At first, she stayed close. Watched everything. Didn't speak much. Then slowly, she stepped in. Held brushes, passed nails, asked questions. Why does this light blink? Can we make it brighter? Do kids get scared in the dark? Callum answered all of them, or tried to. Because the truth was, he was learning too. They planted a small evergreen tree near the entrance. Not tall, not perfect, but alive. Lila knelt in the snow, pressing her mittened hands into the dirt around it. What do we call it? Callum asked. She thought for a moment, then said hope. Simple, certain. He didn't argue. The community started to notice. At first just curiosity, people slowing down, watching. Then they stayed. A woman brought blankets. A man offered to repair the carousel for free. Local artists painted murals across the old walls, bright colors, children laughing, winter skies filled with light instead of emptiness. The pier began to breathe again. Not because it was perfect, but because people were there. Because someone had decided it mattered. Lila changed with it. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic way. In small things. She laughed easier, walked a little further ahead instead of behind. Stopped flinching at every loud noise. She started decorating. Paper stars in the windows, ribbons tied around railings. One afternoon, she pressed her painted hand onto a newly finished bench. Blue, bright, permanent. She looked up at Callum, unsure. Is that okay? He smiled. Yeah, he said. That stays. Because some things weren't mistakes. Some things were proof. At home, the changes followed. The apartment wasn't quiet anymore. It had sound, movement, life, music playing low in the background, dishes in the sink, drawings on the fridge multiplying day by day, Lila's room filled with color, books stacked unevenly, a small lamp she refused to turn off at night, the snow globe still on her bedside table, always within reach. One evening, she stood in the doorway while Callum worked, just watching. Then asked, "Are you going to leave?" The question came out of nowhere, but also from everything. Callum turned slowly, met her eyes. No, he said. Not rushed, not defensive, just, true, I'm staying. She studied him, longer this time, testing it, feeling it, then nodded. Once, like she was starting to believe him. Back at the pier, lights began to glow at dusk, one by one, strings of gold cutting through the cold blue air. The carousel creaked, then moved, slow, then steady, for the first time in years. Callum stood beside Lila watching it turn, watching something broken work again. This place was lonely, she said softly. He looked down at her, then back at the lights. Yeah, he said. It was. She slipped her hand into his. No hesitation this time. No fear, just a natural. And Callum realized something then. They weren't just rebuilding a pier. They were rebuilding everything that had been left behind, everything that had been ignored, everything that deserved another chance. And for the first time, he didn't feel like a man fixing something. He felt like someone finally, part of it. The change didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment, no sudden shift, just little things, quiet things, The kind you only notice if you're paying attention. And Callum was. Always. Lila stopped asking if she could eat. At first it had been careful. Is this okay? Can I have more? Do I need to save some? Now she just reached. Not greedily, not fearfully, naturally. Like food was something that belonged to her too. Like she wasn't borrowing it from the world anymore. She stopped hiding things. Not completely, but enough. No more wrapping pieces of bread in napkins just in case. No more watching the table like someone might take it away. Callum noticed the day she left half a sandwich on the plate. Didn't finish it, didn't panic, just left it and walked away. He didn't say anything, but it stayed with him. Because that was trust. At the pier, she moved differently now, not behind him, beside him, sometimes ahead. Her red coat bright against the winter gray boots crunching confidently over snow instead of hesitating at every step. She greeted people. Hi, good morning. Be careful, it's slippery. Small things. But they mattered, because her voice wasn't afraid to exist anymore. The reading cottage became her place, her idea, her world. She arranged the books herself, sorting them by size, by color, by something only she understood. She placed soft cushions on the floor, smoothing each one like she was building something fragile. This is for quiet, she explained one afternoon. Callum leaned in the doorway. Quiet. She nodded. For kids who have too many loud thoughts. The words hit harder than anything else that day. Because she wasn't guessing. She knew. He didn't ask her to explain. He didn't need to. Instead, he stepped inside, lowered his voice, and said, "Then we should keep it really safe." She smiled, small, but proud. At home, the nights softened. No more sudden waking. No more sitting upright in silence, listening for danger that wasn't coming. Some nights, she still reached for the snow globe in her sleep, but her grip wasn't desperate anymore. Just familiar. Like holding on to something that reminded her where she came from without pulling her back into it. Callum changed too. He noticed it in ways that surprised him. He stopped checking his phone at dinner, stopped answering emails after sunset, stopped treating time like something that always needed to be chased. Now he stayed. On the floor helping tape paper stars, at the counter burning cookies and trying again, on the couch reading slowly while Lila leaned against his arm. He had built an empire out of movement, but this stillness felt more important than anything he had ever owned. One evening, while stringing lights across the pier, Lila paused, looked out at the growing glow, the booths, the colors, the people starting to gather even before opening. "Do you think they'll like it?" she asked. Callum followed her gaze. Kids running across newly cleared paths. A volunteer laughing as she untangled wires. Someone hanging ornaments on the tree named Hope. "I think they already do," he said. Lila watched for a moment longer, then nodded, satisfied. Later that night, back home, she stood in front of the mirror in her room, turning slightly, examining herself. Callum passed by the open door, paused. She looked different. Not just because of clean clothes, not just because of warmth. There was something else, something brighter. Not loud, not obvious, but there. Like a light that had been buried under too much cold, finally reaching the surface. She caught him watching. "Do I look okay?" she asked. Callum smiled. "You look like yourself," he said. She considered that, then smiled back. And that smile, it wasn't careful. It wasn't practiced. It wasn't waiting for permission. It just happened. The next morning, she ran ahead of him at the pier. Actually ran. Turned back. Waited. Then ran again. Like she was testing something. Like she was making sure the world wouldn't pull her back. Callum didn't call her to slow down. Didn't stop her. He just followed. because that's what she needed now. Not protection at every step, but space to move forward. That evening, as the lights flickered on across the entire pier gold, warm, alive, Lila stood in the center of it all. Snow falling gently around her, breath steady, eyes bright. No fear, no hesitation, just presence. Callum watched from a few steps away and realized something quietly. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She wasn't just safe. She was becoming something else, something stronger, something softer, something whole. The girl who once sat under a broken light now stood in the middle of 1,000. And for the first time, she didn't look like she belonged to the cold. She looked like she belonged to the light. The lights came on all at once. Not gradually, not quietly. 1 second dark, the next gold. The entire pier glowed like it had been waiting years for this exact moment. Music drifted through the cold air. Soft at first, then fuller. Laughter followed. Real laughter. Not echoes, not memory, alive. Callum stood near the entrance, hands in his coat, watching people walk in beneath the new sign, "Welcome home." They slowed when they saw it. Some smiled, some didn't, some just paused, because those words, they meant more than decoration. Lila stood a few steps ahead of him. Red coat, scarf pulled tight, snow catching in her hair. She didn't move at first, just watched, like she was making sure it was real. Then a child ran past her, then another, boots slipping, laughter spilling, voices filling spaces that had once been silent. Lila turned back toward Callum, eyes wide. Did we do this? Not disbelief, not pride, something in between. Callum nodded slowly. We did. That was enough. She smiled and stepped forward. The snow globe booth sat near the center. Small, simple, but bright. Rows of tiny globes lined the shelves, each one hand-painted, each one holding a small, folded message inside. Lila moved behind the table like she had always belonged there. A little girl approached, hesitant, cold, familiar. Lila picked up a globe, held it out. "You can choose one," she said gently. The girl looked confused. "Do I have to pay?" Lila shook her head. No. The girl took it slowly, carefully, like it might be taken back, just like Lila once had. Callum watched from a distance, didn't step in, didn't interrupt, because this wasn't his moment. As night deepened, the pier filled, lights reflecting off snow, music weaving through the air, people staying longer than they planned to. Not because they had to, because they wanted to. Lila walked beside Callum again, slipping her hand into his without looking. Natural. Easy. "Is this forever?" she asked softly. Callum knelt beside her, brushing snow from her sleeve. "Yeah," he said. "Forever and a day." She nodded, and for the first time she believed it. Behind them, the carousel turned, steady, bright, alive again, just like everything else that had once been left behind. Christmas came quietly. Snow covered the city in soft white, muting the noise, slowing everything down. From the penthouse windows, Chicago looked almost gentle. Rooftops, glowing streets, softened the river, moving slow and silver beneath the morning light. Inside it was warm, alive. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and sugar. Cocoa steamed on the stove. Something in the oven rose unevenly, slightly burnt on one side. Callum didn't care. Because Lila was already awake, running, laughing, too full of energy to stay still. Her red dress moved around her like a spark, bright against the soft gold light filling the room. She spun once in the middle of the living space, then stopped just to make sure he was still watching. He was. Always. The snow globe hung on the tree, now repaired, catching the light between a paper star and a crooked angel she had made the night before. Lila reached up and touched it gently. like it still mattered, like it always would. Callum handed her a small box. She opened it slowly. Inside, a silver necklace, a tiny snowflake. She didn't say anything at first, just held it, then looked up, eyes shining. "Is it mine?" Callum smiled. "Yeah." Her fingers closed around it. Careful, certain, like she understood the difference now between something given and something that stays. Later, bundled in scarves and coats, they stepped back out into the snow, toward the pier, toward the lights, toward everything they had built together. Lila slipped her hand into his. No hesitation, no fear, just belonging. And for the first time, Christmas didn't feel like memory, or loss, or something that used to hurt. It felt like a beginning. The pier was already alive when they arrived. Voices, music, movement. Not loud enough to overwhelm, just enough to remind you you weren't alone. Snow drifted slowly through the golden lights, settling on coats, on railings, on the sign at the entrance. "Welcome home." Lila paused beneath it, read it again, like she needed to be sure it still meant her. Callum stood beside her, waiting. "Then come on," he said gently. She nodded and stepped forward. The snow globe booth was full. Children gathered, parents lingered, hands reached carefully across the table, picking up something small but meaningful. Lila moved between them with quiet confidence, helping, guiding, smiling, in a way that didn't ask permission anymore. Callum watched her, pride settling deep, real, earned. Then he called her over. "Hey," he said, holding out an envelope. She frowned slightly. "What's that?" "Open it." Her fingers worked slowly, carefully tearing the edge. Inside paper. Official. Different. She unfolded it. Read. Stopped. Looked up. Eyes wide. "Is this real?" Callum nodded. "It is." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "So I stay." He knelt in front of her just like before. Same level. Same steady presence. "You stay," he said. No hesitation, no conditions. Just truth. Her lip trembled, then she stepped forward and hugged him, tight, holding on like something that had almost been taken but wasn't. This time. Not again. Around them, the world kept moving. Lights flickered, voices rose, snow fell. But in that moment, nothing else mattered. Because this wasn't just paper. It wasn't just permission. It was something deeper. Something final. Something that said she wasn't going anywhere. Not anymore. Night settled softly over the city. Snow fell in slow silence, covering everything in quiet white. Inside the penthouse, warmth. Stillness. Home. Callum stood in the doorway of Lila's room. She was already under the blanket, the snow globe resting beside her, the necklace still around her neck, catching a faint line of moonlight. Her eyes were heavy, but not afraid. "Are you staying?" she murmured, half asleep, half needing to hear it again. Callum stepped closer, sat at the edge of the bed. "I'm right here," he said. She reached for his hand. Small, warm, certain. "Promise," she whispered. He leaned down slightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Forever and a day. This time she didn't question it, didn't wait, didn't doubt. She just closed her eyes and slept, peacefully, deeply, like the world had finally stopped asking her to be strong. Callum stayed a little longer, watching, listening, letting the quiet fill him in a way it never had before. Because now it wasn't empty, it was full. Outside, the city rested under winter's hush. Inside, a man who once had everything finally had something that mattered. And for the first time, he understood what home really meant. Did this story touch your heart? Let us know how you felt. Rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments below. If it moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss our next heartfelt story. Click the end screen to watch more emotional journeys. See you in the next one.